Sometimes I dream about the way things used to be. But never too long, because you're lucky if you get more than 20 minutes of sleep at a time now. It's just the way it is. I don't think I've slept 6 hours straight since it happened. Sleep is one thing I think we all took for granted. You know, I used to have a YouTube channel. It was this thing on the internet. And I talked about all the possibilities of what would happen when the proverbial shit hits the fan, as we called it. Now that word just seems, it always comes up short in trying to describe this. Anyways, I talk about all these topics, and I was supposed to do a video once about sleep, because I felt that it was one of those things that we'd be struggling with, and sure enough, we are. Because of the dangers of this world now as it is. I mean, you're lucky if you get more than a couple hours sleep at a time. Usually it's 20 minutes at a time. We sleep in shifts. We have to. It's the only safe way to do it. But you know, I tell my kids stories of, and they don't believe me. I don't blame them. You know, I wouldn't believe me either. They're 2 and 3 years old when it happened. And they think it's a bunch of bullshit. They think Dad's just, you know, telling stories again. But I tried to tell them, you know, there was a time when you could take off your socks at the end of the day, where you could live in a warm house, and you could go onto a nice clean bed. You could put your feet up, you could get under the blankets, and you could just sleep for as long as you wanted. Well, until you had to go to work to pay the bills, but there wasn't no worry about having your stuff stolen at night, or being stabbed in the middle of the night for your stuff, or your kids getting snagged in the middle of the night. You could just sleep. I mean, there were still threats like that, but now it's 1,000 times worse after it happened. And you know, when we were talking about all this shit hits the fan, as we called it, we'd always talk about the scary marauders, you know, the gangs, you know, just evil people would be lurking in the night and trying to take what you had and, you know, rape and pillage. But 90% of the problem nowadays, it's not marauders, it's thieves. The thievery, man. If I could have foreseen the thievery, because what they do is, I mean, people, I think we had it in our minds that everybody was just some, you know, Mad Max renegade who was just going to run in, you know, run into battle headstrong and risk it all, life and limb. But that's not how it is. People are sneaky. People don't want to get hurt. They don't want confrontation. So what they do is they scope you out from the bushes. They watch quietly. They get to know your routine for days on end. And regrettably so, I know, because I've had to do it once. Back when, right after it happened, when we were just kind of getting a bit of footing in this new world, my kids were young and they needed food. And I didn't want confrontation, you know. When it gets down to it, nobody wants that. So it's the thieves, man. You gotta keep your stuff close. Because if you don't have it in your clutches, it's probably not gonna last. My kids now, well, they're not really kids anymore. They're almost adults. But they've adapted to that world. They don't have they have a greater advantage than I do, because I have to wake up at night, dreaming of food. That's got to be the worst. Every night I wake up and I'm dreaming of something from the old world. And it's amazing how vivid those memories still are. And I try to communicate that to my kids. They don't believe me. It's just, I hear them, whispering to each other and murmuring. Just the old man telling tall tales, stories. I mean, living like this, like rats in the forest, scavenging. I mean, well, we plant the odd thing here and there in the summertime, but at these latitudes, it's tough. But you go down further, and that's where trouble lies. But I hear him murmuring about how it's just Dad BSing, and I don't blame him, man, because how could you ever think that we had these big warehouses, buildings of abundant food when we're running around here like this trying to survive? I don't blame them for not getting it. I don't blame them for not being able to fathom what I've seen. If only they could have seen it. If only, I sometimes have dreams where I could take them back in time, having lived their whole lives in this shithole. Just take them back there for one day and just to bring them to one of these supermarkets and just to see their jaws hit the floor with aisles and aisles of food stacked sky high. All types of food, the colors in the store, the smell. I mean, you could go into a grocery store and you could have any type of fruit and vegetable that you would want. Doesn't matter where in the world it came from, thousands and thousands of miles away. And you could look at these beautiful pieces of fruit and there'd be like no imperfections on it. And it's not like it is now where you have to do a day's work just to yield something like that. You could go and throw the cashier a couple dollars, walk out with a giant bag of apples. They don't believe me when I tell them that. I don't blame them. I mean, it seems like fantasy compared to now. It took us 10,000 years to get to that point. The stores were just bursting at the seams with goods. I try to tell them, because now it's all, if you can't defend yourself, you're dead. I try to explain to them the concept of the police, and they can't understand how you could trust people like that. They can't wrap their head around how you could trust. They don't know what the government is, but they can't wrap their head around how you could entrust somebody to protect you, because they've always lived a life of not trusting anybody. It's a survival instinct. I try to tell them how you could use this thing called a phone. I had a dog back in the day called Marshall, and they had babies, and we were able to keep them alive because they learned to hunt for themselves. And so this is Duke. Duke's about 2 years old. He's descended from Marshall's lineage. Anyways, what I was saying about the police. Yeah, the police, how you could use this device called a phone. and this is where they think I'm totally out to lunch, and you could actually, project your voice thousands and thousands of miles across the airwaves, and you could call these police if you were in trouble, and they would actually come and get the bad guys. Now, throughout all of this, I think part of the reason why they don't believe it is because they don't understand how it ever got to this, if that was the case. Why we would ever have chosen this as our destiny when we had it so damn good. Where you could go to bed at night, sleep, safety and security, where you had shelter. You had running water, for God's sakes. They don't even know what that is. I mean, we go and we do scavenging runs where we go from house to house, and they see the taps and they see the beds, but they never obviously get to experience the running water. And even if they do lay in one of the beds for a while, it's just it's not the same, because we're always on edge, right? You don't even know if somebody's hiding in the place, hiding in the basement. I mean, you got to be in and out real quick. It's dangerous. Even right now, having this fire is a big time hazard. Fortunately, we're in the thick of the trees here. It's sunny out today, so it's hard to see the smoke from a distance through the tall trees. It's not hard to smell it though, but I think we're far enough out that we don't have to worry about much. Whenever you try to set up a homestead or something like that, they'll get you. They always do. Chase you out, or the thieves make it impossible to build any sort of settlement. Now, there is a few groups out there who are taking people in, but from what I hear, they expect you to do stuff, and as far as I know, there's a lot of self-proclaimed kings of the post-apocalypse, if you know what I mean. And they expect you to do things, and like hell, I'm gonna subject my kids to that, so we choose to live out here. I don't know, maybe it's not as bad as they say it is, but it's hard to trust anybody nowadays. I'm surprised we made it this far, this long. All the infections and the broken bones, and I try to tell my kids about these things we had called hospitals, where you could just walk in and they would take away your pain. They would treat your wounds, and it was a clean, sterile environment, and there was people who had researched this stuff for their whole lives, called doctors and specialists, and they would be able to care for you and treat you in ways which, I don't think I've seen a doctor in years. And if you do see one, you wouldn't know, because they don't like to make themselves known anymore, because I don't blame them for that. They don't want to get, taken hostage, taken captive. That's what happens. These groups, if they know you have some essential skill set, they'll try to bring you in, and if you don't want to come voluntarily, they might just take you. So people are pretty quiet about what they know. You got to be careful with what you disavow, your skill set. Next year, we're going to move deeper into the woods, if we can make it that long. And we're going to try to build a little settlement. But the soil here, we got a few seeds, but it doesn't seem to be, seeds don't be taken too well to this soil at these latitudes. And I'd hate to hit the road and have to migrate south, because from what I hear, it's pretty dangerous. Not a lot of people make it, or you're kidnapped, taken to work in one of these slave camps. If you're lucky, maybe you get conscripted into one of these communities I'm talking about, but that's probably one of the best things that can happen. It's amazing how little human nature changed. But I knew it was coming. I thought about it from every possible angle. When my preps ran out after the first year, supposed to have 3 to 4 years worth of preps, they only lasted me a year. That's what happens, when you're giving stuff away and thieves are taking shit, and just the depression of the situation makes you mismanage your resources, and you think you're going to be this meticulous person who's going to ration and do everything down to the numbers, but things just got way too out of control too fast, and there was no orderly way to do that. When you're in a state of total disorder and anarchy, good luck trying to keep the books on anything. Anyways, I got to try to get a bit of shut-eye here. We're going to start moving tonight. It's easier to move at night. Anyways, yeah.